America is under attack. Our families are being crushed under the politics of a radical agenda. But moms have had enough. We are standing up and we are fighting back.
This is our battle. This battle is every bit as important as the Revolutionary War because we fight for the same thing.
Moms for America is a national movement of moms reclaiming our culture for truth, family, freedom, and the Constitution.
I think Moms for America is exactly on track and is doing the right thing for the future of our country and our children.
Like Moms for America is going at the heart of the issue.
But I am honored to join Moms for America today as we speak out against the horrific mandates.
With a national network of over 500,000 mothers, Moms for America is one of the fastest growing movements of women in the country.
Well, the most dangerous place in all of nature is between a mama bear and her baby cub.
We are the change. No matter what, no matter where, and no matter how difficult the obstacles are that are facing us and our families, we will not give up and we will not give in.
So if not now, then when? If not you, then who?
Welcome to the Motherland Revolution.
Thank you again for joining us at CPAC 2024. Do you have any questions? If so, look for the volunteers with this, and they will direct you to the right place. We hope you have a great time at this year's conference.
For the last 3 years, the Biden administration's attack on American energy weakened our standing in the world. After the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Europeans worried about Vladimir Putin cutting off their energy supply. Here at home, the Biden administration would blame Russia for rising gas prices, even though the cost of gas was already up 40% before the invasion. Meanwhile, Russia joined with other OPEC countries to cut oil production, further driving up the price of gasoline. We saw President Biden travel to Saudi Arabia and beg them for oil. More recently, Hamas terrorists launched a brutal attack on civilians. Under President Biden, Hamas ally Iran had a record year for oil exports in 2022, with their biggest customers being China and Venezuela. Surrendering American energy independence carries a steep price tag. It's something we should all remember because in 2024, energy is on the ballot.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is What You Talking About, Fannie Willis. Please welcome Chairman of U.S. House Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan, and CPAC Chairman, Matt Schlapp.
Hey, guys.
Can you imagine? I get to ask Chairman Jim Jordan questions. You're usually the one.
Well,
okay, so let's start off with what's on a lot of people's minds. You know, does she not understand we can still be friends, but the love is over? Does Nikki Haley not kind of get what we're saying?
I didn't know that was going to be a question.
I told you I threw you a curveball.
Yeah, you're well, look, President Trump's going to be our nominee. I think he's going to win. He's the one president, certainly in my lifetime, who did more what he said he was going to do than any president I've ever seen. And I love the line. When we talk about the weaponization of government, just look at President Trump and the escalation that the left and the government have taken to going after this guy. I mean, it started with the spying on his campaign, then it was the Mueller investigation, then it was impeachment, then it was a raid on his home, then it was the 14th Amendment. It's 4 different, 2 state cases, the 2 federal cases, all the indictments. It's gotten ridiculous, but he has a great line, and you've all heard him say it. He says, they're coming after me because I'm fighting for you. And that is so true, and that's why I so appreciate President Trump. So yeah, let's get behind President Trump and let's win
this thing on, huh?
Yep. He actually changed it. When we were out in Iowa, he changed that. We were at this nice rally he did when it was like minus 20 degrees out there, and he still had people showing up to hear him. But he changed the line. He said, they're coming after my freedom because I'm fighting for yours. And I told him, I said, I like that even better because it is so true, so accurate, what we see with the federal government, these agencies, what they're doing to we the people. And he is fighting for us. And so let's get behind him and make sure he wins in November.
I'm not sure if Jimmy Kimmel understood what the title of this conversation is. What you talking about, Willis? Bonnie Willis. Did she get back to you today?
Yeah, we subpoenaed her. Not yet. I just talked to our staff.
Is she supposed to get back to you today?
Yeah, she's supposed to get documents.
Well, did you hear from her boyfriend?
We haven't. So I was talking about this in the office, and I said Fonnie Wade, and it was like a Freudian slip, you know, like Fonnie Willis and Nathan Wade. So no, we haven't heard back from her yet. We'll see what we get from her. But there's a whistleblower in her office who we have talked to, the committee staff. Yeah, and she. The whistleblower, I think she's like 4'11", but Fonnie Willis had 7 police escort her out when she fired this lady, because this lady raised the concern that Miss Willis was not spending federal funds and not following the grant, the rules of the grant and the grant dollars in the appropriate manner. So she raised this concern, and then Fonnie Willis fired her. She's now talking with our office, and we'll see where that goes. And that's why we subpoenaed for records and documents related to this. We'll see what we get. There's still a few hours left in today. She also was interesting. She, instead of accepting service on the subpoena, she made us send the U.S. Marshals. Even though our office had talked with her office, we've had correspondence back and forth, she made the U.S. Marshals take the subpoena there. So go figure. This is Fonnie Willis, and we all saw her, I think, her attitude on display when she took the stand a few weeks ago.
I thought it was a skit, but I think it actually was real life.
It was real.
You know, we sent out a tweet that said, we didn't invite Fonnie Willis to CPAC, but there is a Fonnie sandwich with a chaser of Grey Goose vodka if you have enough cash, ready cash in your pocket.
Yeah, the comedy routine from Mr. Slap coming out today. That's awesome.
It's been a long year, Jim.
Well, but we appreciate what you do. We appreciate what CPAC has meant for conservative principles for a long, long time.
Thank you. It means a lot.
So do they.
You're a hero to a lot of us for a lot of reasons, but you have 100% rating in our scorecard. You've had, as you have now, in positions of importance, big titles, just always do the right thing. And you always vote right. Well, how come you don't wander off and get this kind of Potomac fever like everyone else gets?
I mean, you're being kind, but...
Is it because you're not a senator?
There's lots of good senators, too. I appreciate that. Look, I say this all the time. You probably all heard me say it. I think we make the job way too complicated. You're a member of Congress, you're in public office. It's really, your objective is really pretty basic. What'd you tell the voters you were going to do when you put your name on the ballot, you ran for the office? If they, in fact, elect you, go do what you said. Go fight for the things you told them you're going to. That's how this compact works between the elected officials and the people we get the privilege of representing. And I try to remember that when I think about the people in West Central, North Central Ohio, and the 4th District.
Anybody here from Ohio? There we go. By the way, the room looks pretty full.
Yeah.
Room looks pretty full. I wonder why.
Yeah.
Wonder why. I think you're liked.
Yeah.
You know, Mercy, who's sitting over there, worked for President Trump in the White House, and Mercy and I worked in the Bush White House together. That's a whole other story. But the White House counsel is one of the most important jobs in that White House. By the way, whenever you're the White House counsel, if you work for a Republican, everyone knows who you are. There's stories constantly about all the legal turmoil about every Republican president. I don't know if people realize that Joe Biden has a White House counsel. He's pretty much anonymous. I've never read stories about him. I'm reading that his office is coordinating and meeting at least with Fonnie Willis, with her then boyfriend, meeting with the folks who are going after Trump President Trump in New York.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we know who this is? And why is he getting away with what I view as, this is me, not you, as an American citizen? It looks like there's a lot of coordination from the White House on running cover on Hunter Biden and Biden Incorporated and the attack, this persecution on President Trump.
Well, yeah, Nathan Wade, the guy from Fonnie Willis's office, he's supposedly had contact with the White House counsel's office, with the White House, with the Justice Department, with the January 6th committee, all that going on. It looks
shouldn't they be running an independent
Well, you would think. You would think. Now, I'm sure he's entitled to some of that information, but we want to know how this is all played out, particularly when you think about the fact they're going after their political opponent and the history I just talked about that started clear back in 15 and 16 when they started spying on his campaign. By the way, based on a confidential human source who we now know lied to him. Nothing seems to happen to Christopher Steele. I'm sure the audience remembers that name. Now we have this confidential human source who Christopher Wray told us, filled out this 1023 form the FBI did, and Christopher Wray told us that this guy, oh, we can't give you the 1023 form. This guy has been a 14-year confidential human source. We've paid him. He's respected. We don't want to risk his safety. And now they arrest the guy, not once, but twice. I don't know. Maybe the guy did lie. But it sure is quite a contrast for Christopher Steele can give false information about President Trump, and he continues to get paid. This guy, this Mr. Smirnoff, can give false information. What they've said is false information, and he gets arrested. Double standard again.
I might just be slow on the go, but I don't think I'm just going to fall for the next Russian collusion immediately. I'd probably wait for proof.
Yeah. 2016, it was Trump-Russia. Of course, Mueller told us that didn't happen. 2020, it was, the laptops of Russian information op. 51 former intel officials signed that statement. Turned out to be baloney, and now here we go again, round 3. Maybe it's a case, but sure seems strange to me.
What's going to happen with Hunter?
Well, he testifies next week in our deposition, so we'll have some questions for him. We continue to dig into our work. One thing that I would say for sure is, I say this all the time, there are 4 fundamental facts that will never change. Fact number 1, Hunter Biden gets put on the board of Burisma, gets paid $1 million a year. Fact number.
But he is an energy expert. You have to give him that. Right?
Fact number.
He has a lot of energy.
You beat me to the punch on fact number 2. Fact number 2, he's not qualified. He said so himself in an interview, I think, with ABC News. Fact number 3, Hunter Biden meeting with the CEOs of Burisma. They asked him, can you weigh in and help relieve the pressure we are under from the prosecutor in Ukraine? He calls DC, calls his father, according to his business partner, Devin Archer, when we deposed him. Fact number 4, 3 days after that phone call, Joe Biden goes to your tax dollars on the firing of that prosecutor. That went against, by the way. Those 4 facts are, Joe Biden bragged about the last thing. He bragged about doing that. Those 4 facts go against what the State Department said they needed to happen. They'd send a letter to the prosecutor saying, you're doing a good job. 2 months before, they said the Interagency Policy Committee says, oh, Ukraine warrants this $1 billion. Joe Biden changed it. What caused him to change it? Could it have been the phone call from his son asking? And Joe Biden gets this guy fired who's applying the pressure to the company that Hunter Biden sits on the board of, making $1 million a year. That's not supposed to be how things operate, but those facts are fundamental. So regardless of what the Democrats say about this confidential human source, those facts don't change.
I just want to go back to the previous question and say the White House counsel is Ed Siskel. I'm not accusing him of doing anything wrong, but I do think there's a lot of wrongdoing associated with the attempt to imprison Joe Biden's general election opponent. And I think we ought to know who the man is. I think we ought to answer some questions. And I want to know why the Biden administration and the Biden White House doesn't recuse itself from questions concerning their own campaign. It seems like a very basic thing. And I think that the people of CPAC, let's start asking questions about Ed Siskel. You agree? You have all these victims. You went back through Russiagate, Russian collusion, what went on during that 2016 campaign. Mercy and I know this. We've had a lot of calls over the last several years from dear friends who are quietly bankrupted, quietly investigated, quietly having their lives destroyed, quietly having their professional lives destroyed, all because they want to wear a red hat.
Yeah.
That's the reason. I have an interesting question for you, something for you to consider. Until all those people get their legal fees back, I think of KT McFarland, who's on my board, and spent 7 figures of her money just answering basic questions. Until all these victims, we have these J6 victims who were in the crowd, others, until they were made whole financially by our government who wronged them, and by DOJ in particular, won't the wrongdoing just keep going on and on and on? No one seems to go to jail.
Now there is some positive, because we focused on this, I mentioned earlier, this weaponization of the very agencies that are supposed to serve we the people that have been turned against us. So this weaponization.
And it's more than 1 or 2, right?
Right. It is, there have been some positives. So we pointed out a year or so ago that the Department of Homeland Security had set up the Disinformation Governance Board. Remember this? Right? As if some agency can tell you what you're allowed to say, what you're not allowed to say in a country where we have the First Amendment. But they were attempting to do this. We made such a big issue of this. You guys helped all kinds of conservatives around the country that they got rid of that board. So there's sometimes just by drawing attention to the ridiculous things that are going on, you can make a difference. Another example, The IRS announced 4.5 months ago that they would no longer be making unannounced visits to American citizens' homes. And Danny Werfel, the commissioner, that's a good thing, yeah. Danny Werfel, the commissioner at the IRS, said, well, we're doing this because we're concerned about the safety of our agents. Baloney. Baloney, they're doing it because we caught them knocking on Matt Taibbi's door at the very moment he was testifying in front of the Select Committee on the Weaponization of Government. Now, you can't make this up. He's testifying, talking, and Democrats are asking about to reveal his sources, attacking First Amendment free press rights. While he's explaining to them why you can't do that in this country, why he didn't have to divulge his sources, the IRS agent was knocking on it. Turned out they actually owed him money. It wasn't the other way around. Go figure. So sometimes just by highlighting these things, you can have an impact. We just got to keep it up. And then we're also going to be focused on legislation, particularly where the government is involved in censoring American speech. You have a cause of action. We got legislation that Mr. Bishop and Ms. Hageman are going to introduce on the Judiciary Committee that we think will help address this situation. By the way, that is the most important thing. All this other crazy stuff that the left has done, we can recover from it all. But if they take away our First Amendment liberties, I always tell folks, we have 5 rights under the First Amendment. Your right to practice your faith, your right to assemble like we're doing today, your right to petition your government, free press, free speech. All critically important, but the most important is your right to talk. Because if you can't speak, you can't practice your faith, you can't share your faith, you can't petition your government, and you don't have a free press. And that is what they're going after. And so we are really focused on that more than anything else.
So, God bless you for that. So back when I was had a little more brown hair, I did have brown hair at one point, by the way. And I worked on the Hill. President Clinton, and it was really Hillary, let's face it, she corruptly fired the travel office because she didn't like what they were doing. And the Republican majority came back and made those people whole. They gave them back their pensions. They helped them with their legal fees. What CPAC, I think, would like to do is partner with the good guys like you to make sure, not more spending, but DOJ has a lot of little slush funds over there, and they don't always go to good causes. I just think we should have some more funds over at DOJ that go after, if the United States government goes after you for years, uses every penny of your savings, or you have to hire all these expensive lawyers and go through all that process. You get down to the end, and they give you a parking ticket. I think you deserve to be made whole.
Well said, well said. Yeah.
Finally, talk about these First Amendment freedoms. By the way, freedom of the press is not the first one. Sorry, guys in the back, but they always think it's the first one. But it's a very important one.
Sure is.
Catherine Herridge, what is going on?
Well, we're trying to dig into this, but what happened here looks really, really wrong in my judgment, because they've grabbed everything. So this is her sources, her information. And that is just does not happen when you're talking about the press. We're talking about what CBS, just as a breaking story, CBS fired Catherine Herridge, who, by the way, has done an amazing job, an amazing journalist, fair journalist, and grabbed her stuff. I mean, literally grabbed her stuff. So this is, again, I think this further encroachment by folks on the left, which now unfortunately controls the Democrat Party, this encroachment on First Amendment rights. And, you know, think back to COVID. They told Americans, we had governors and mayors tell Americans, you can't go to church on Sunday. In America, I mean, think about that.
The government closed down the church.
Yes, it's crazy. And that I remember I gave a speech to the New Mexico Republican Party in Amarillo, Texas, because their liberal Democrat governor wouldn't let them assemble in their own state. So they had to go to Texas to get the freedom to assemble, and on it goes. So
and
it's
I think
scary.
a lot of them just ended up staying because it was a much better place.
Maybe. So yeah, this is scary what's happening to Catherine. Many of you, I'm sure everyone knows what great reporting she's done over the years, both for Fox and then for CBS. But what CBS has done just doesn't make sense, and something that we're going to dig into.
So I think the biggest problem we have, despite all the policy and constitutional crises and everything else, the biggest problem we have is in our own hearts. A lot of people are giving up. They're saying we've lost so much ground. We've already lost the Constitution. They cheat in elections. We can't win elections. It's too late. We believe at CPAC, one of our biggest jobs is to wake those people up and make them understand this in November is the fight for the future of America.
Well said.
What is your inspirational message to those folks who might have given up?
The people. I mean, the left controls big media, the left controls big tech, the left controls big corporations, the left controls big sports, the left controls academia, the left controls Hollywood, the left controls the bureaucracy, which is crazy. The left now controls the United States Senate, and they control the White House, but the left doesn't control we the people.
Amen.
And that is always what this country is about. And that's why you guys are here. We remember that, and remember there's a guy at the top of the ticket who has
You mean the really big guy, or?
I mean President Trump, who's going to be at the top of the ticket, who cares about that First Amendment, cares about this great country, and is not, and is just as positive as you can be in spite of everything that's happened to him. You know him. I've gotten the chance to know this guy, but he is such an amazing guy who loves this country, loves regular people like folks in this room, and is willing to go fight for us because he cares about the greatest nation ever.
Are we going to win?
We are. Yeah.
I think that's a great way to end it. Thank you, Jim Jordan.
Thank you. Thank you all. God bless. Good to see you all. Thank you. We're going to...
Ladies and gentlemen, who's the White House counsel? Please welcome from Florida, Congresswoman Kat Comack, and editor of townhall.com, Katie Pavlich.
A busy Friday afternoon at our hands.
A little bit. I've been up since 4. So
yeah, exactly. Good afternoon,
punchy.
everybody. Thank you for joining us here at CPAC. I'm with the wonderful Congresswoman Kat Comack, who got up at 4 a.m. to catch a flight to be here today. So thank you very much for being here with us today.
Absolutely. This is great.
So 1 year ago, we were here in the same place on the same stage, and you were just getting started with your work on the subcommittee for the weaponization of the federal government in the House.
Yes.
So I wanted to make sure that we gave the audience an update on the work that you've been doing over the past year, because really the weaponization of the federal government is an assault on people's constitutional rights. So maybe just give an overview of what you're doing, and then we can get into the details.
Yeah, absolutely. So how many people here feel that the government has gotten way too big? Okay. How many people feel that the government has abused its powers against everyday American citizens? Yeah. I mean, there's a pretty much general consensus that there's a problem happening in the country where these unelected, nameless, faceless bureaucrats think that they all of a sudden have the power to take on everyday American citizens and strip them of their constitutional rights. And so for the last year, under the leadership of Chairman Jim Jordan, who y'all just saw, wasn't Jim great? He's amazing. We have been tackling all the various aspects of weaponization of federal government. And it's everything from the Ukrainian intelligence service, which is directing the FBI to take down your social media posts, or a bank giving up your financial information to the FBI to search for key terms that would indicate that you are a radical individual. For example, if you shop at Bass Pro or at Cabela's, I guess that makes me a radical. But that is the type of work that we've been undertaking. And one of the key areas that has just really emerged is this nexus between AI and censorship. And this is where we dig into the industrial censorship complex. And I think that's one way to really encapsulate the work that we've done, is really defining and digging into this new era of the industrial censorship complex, where big government and big tech work hand in glove to take away your constitutional rights. And the Democrats, they don't think that this is happening. Every single person in this room just said that they think that government's too big and that there's a problem and it's weaponized. And the Democrats think, no, it's not a problem.
So is it that the Democrats don't think it's happening, or it's that the Democrats are fine with it and they see it as a tool to use for their political purposes to continue their control? Because Democrats and the left like government. We We've seen through the Biden administration and through the Obama administration before that, that they are perfectly fine with using the federal government against their political opponents. So is it that they don't know about it, or that they deny so that they can then use it to their advantage?
So we all know that the Democrat agenda, the liberal progressive agenda, it's nothing more than dependency and control. They want to grow the size of government so that we become dependent on all their big government programs so that they can then, of course, maintain control. So when it comes to the Weaponization Committee, without fail, those on the left, all they want to talk about is how it's a sham, that there's no weaponization of government. Oh, and Donald Trump is bad. That's what they want to talk about. They are so obsessed with Donald Trump that they will do anything possible to make sure that he is not the nominee or the 47th president of the United States. Their obsession is real. And it is just unbelievable that they are so blind with hate that that's all they can focus on. They can't see that right in front of you, regardless of whether you're a Republican or Democrat, this is a real problem where everyday rights of Americans are being stripped away, and they're doing nothing in stopping it or trying to tackle it.
So we have a constitution for a reason. People still do have constitutional rights. Yes. But as we continue to move into a completely digital society, whether it's online with information that we consume or with banking, you said it as an example. You know, I shop at Bass Pro. I shop at Cabela's. Through the coverage of your committee and the work that you guys do in the reporting, you know, they're flagging things like Bibles as extremist sales, which is a violation of the First Amendment. And then, of course, the search and seizure without the warrants, which is not just limited to Bass Pro and Cabela's. The FBI has been doing hundreds of thousands of searches illawfully for years now. So how do Americans fight back against this kind of invasion and violation of their rights, especially when it's very difficult to see it happening when you have these federal government agencies like the Treasury Department, for example, and computers that you're not seeing the action on until much later, years later? You know, how are you working to combat this from happening in the first place? Because it seems like it's like guilty until proven innocence kind of thing. Like they do it and then you find out about it later and there's no recourse.
No, I mean, it really does kind of feel like you're in a twilight zone. Like, to your point, you're guilty until proven innocent. And so one of the things that we're doing, and I think Chairman Jordan alluded to this, is some of the legislative fixes, ensuring that your First Amendment right is there, it's protected, and that you have a right to free speech. One of the very, very troubling things, though, is that you could walk up to an average member of Congress, and unlikely that they could outline the 5 tenets of the First Amendment. That is very scary, because these are the people who have taken an oath to uphold the Constitution. And so one thing that we have done is the legislative element, which I will add, one piece of legislation that we're working on in our office is called a fencing bill. We know the challenges that we face in the government funding battles. I mean, no sooner than a week from now, we will probably be looking down the barrel of a government shutdown over a spending battle. So until we can get an attitude adjustment, a very much needed attitude adjustment in Washington, we have a more clever way of figuring out how we can hold these unelected swamp creatures accountable. And that's by fencing their money. Mm-hmm. If we can't cut their money, we're going to fence it. And people are like, well, what would that do? Well, you start in different departments and you hold their money hostage. Two can play this game. And I am so sick and tired, and I know you guys are too, of sitting on the sidelines and watching these people run roughshod over our rights with our money. Mm-hmm. And they treat it like their money. It's our money. It's crazy.
So I'm so glad that you brought up the fencing and the strategy behind holding bureaucrats accountable, because that's exactly it. It's bureaucrats who are faceless, nameless, no accountability for them in these agencies, who happen to mostly be leftists working in the federal government who think they can violate the rights of everyday Americans for the sake of whatever cause they're pushing. So we've seen this issue of big tech partnering with big government, whether it's the White House, whether it's the federal government, other areas, also state governments, for example. But now we're moving into this new phase. I was in San Francisco a couple weeks ago.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Did you?
I was only driving through. Thank God.
Oh, wait, I have to ask. Did you download the poop?
I did not, because I was just only driving through. But it was risky. It was risky. But all the billboards were about AI. And your committee, the Weaponization Committee, just came out with this alarming, almost 100-page report about how the National Institute of Science Foundation, which is a federal government-funded program, is using taxpayer money to work with academia to censor information online, quote, at scale. So talk about this new partnership that has been unveiled, and you've just been appointed to a new commission to work on AI, a bipartisan commission actually. So talk about the dangers of AI and the way that the government is already working through grants, through money, to use it to, quote, censor at scale.
No, it's really terrifying what we're seeing. And so to your point about this new commission that's been formed, we just actually this week announced the new Congressional AI Task Force. And this is really important because I don't know if you guys have seen in the news here in the last week, Microsoft rolled out their new AI platform, and you ask it a question, something as simple as, paint me a picture of a 16th century king from England. And it gives you a guy in dreads and like, it's ridiculous. The front page of the New York Post had a great front cover that talked about how the Pope was a woman, and it is just riddled with DEI BS. And why it's that way is because of the language model. And so what we're doing on the task force is we are ensuring that the language models come from a liberty perspective. Because if you start with garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. And I think there's tremendous potential when it comes to AI. But what does an average American do? What do organizations do? What do organizations or municipalities, cities, counties, what do they do if there's massive at scale because of AI? There's very little recourse. So there has to be some guiding frameworks put in place, but we don't want to overreact like government typically does and drive the innovation out. Because I do see a tremendous opportunity for us to do incredible things using AI. But we have to be cognizant of the dangers around it. And if we don't get this right, we could be staring down the barrel of mass censorship at scale like we saw at Stanford, at MIT, at University of Michigan. And I'll give a quick example. The system that was awarded for MIT with their AI initiative, it said in their findings that they were utilizing AI to reprogram veterans, rural Americans, and people who had a conservative mindset because we couldn't handle truth. And so they were literally using AI to try to reprogram conversations and mindsets and facts. That's dangerous. That's incredibly dangerous. And so I think we have a lot of work to do. We're right at the beginning of where AI is going to be implemented in every single aspect of our life. So we've got to make sure we don't stifle innovation, but we also got to make sure that we are protecting our national security and we're protecting people's constitutional rights.
Essentially, it just has to evolve, right? AI is technology that is evolving. And as we've seen through COVID, through the 2020 election with Hunter's laptop and Twitter, Facebook censoring the lab leak theory for months on end while conservative media outlets were accurately reporting on where that virus came from. So this is happening at an even higher level. And like you said, George Washington was put into this AI system at Microsoft, and the real George Washington did not come out of that. And essentially, they've basically erased all white males from the entire system. And so outside of government, would you encourage private companies to go into this AI space and to hire liberty-minded voices? Because like you said, if you're only hiring people in San Francisco for this AI, it's garbage in, garbage out. You're not going to have any kind of different opinion when it comes to the result.
Absolutely. And I would encourage people who are in the startup space who tend to shy away from it because you have these massive competitors in Google, in Apple, Microsoft, all these people that are playing in this space. And when you start talking to them about a language model that has a philosophical base in freedom and liberty and diversity of thought rather than the traditional DEI check the box mentality, right? It's basically the equivalent of trying to explain Hayek to Stalin. So I know some of my history nerds got that. Appreciate it. Thank you. It makes me feel better. But it's crazy that we are not encouraging these startups to get in the space because there are so many talented voices that need to be in the space and they're getting shut out. And you can see the big competition away. They want to regulate where they can control it, and that's what we have to push back against.
So we have about a minute and a half left here. Just on the issue, going back to the constitutional rights aspect, because it's so important, and as I said, you guys keep finding new things all the time on what the government is doing to backdoor all of these ways they can go around the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, all the amendments. And so, you know, you're in the House, there's a slim margin, Senate is controlled by Chuck Schumer. So how do you get this legislation that you were discussing into a form that can be passed so that they can hold these bureaucrats accountable for what they've been doing?
You know, I think one, it comes down to, you had asked earlier about what can everyday Americans do. I think getting involved, and you guys are here, so you're involved, but getting more people involved and educated about this, and then communicating with your members of Congress is critical. The power of the people is unrealized, quite frankly, and untapped. Because let me tell you, there is nothing that a career politician fears more than a group of people who are motivated, educated, and activated. They are absolute cowards if they roll into their office and their phone lines are ringing off the hook with someone saying, hey, I don't want you to vote for this bill, or hey, I want you to co-sponsor this bill. That is the power of the people that has really not been activated in ways we have seen yet. So that's one thing. But then in getting that across the finish line, there's some creative strategic things we can do through the appropriations process. I am all for single issue bills, and I would love for us to get back to that point where
what about pulling grants from groups?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the oversight element, 100%. Single issue bills where you have members of Congress on record saying, no, I don't want more oversight. I don't want people to know where all their money is going. Put these people on the record and expose them for the cowards that they are. We need to reassert our authority as the people and in Congress.
All right, well, on that note, Congresswoman Kat Cammack, thank you so much for your time. Thank you, CPAC, for having us, and keep up the great work.
Ladies and gentlemen, make sure to visit the CPAC store, powered by Revere Payments, located on the lower level in CPAC Central. And don't forget to vote in the CPAC straw poll. Go to cpac.org/straw poll and enter your PIN number located on your badge. Remember, every vote counts.
Outlets in the mainstream media outlets.
What's happening right now is in a greater context of one of the greatest crimes against humanity, which is an apartheid regime.
The Israeli government is what has fueled this. It's Israel that is occupying the Palestinians, not the other way around.
And it's basically like living, Alex, in an open-air prison.
I think Hamas mainly at
I gave you my answer. You didn't give an answer. And I think anybody who watches would understand what your actual position is here.
Once Israel moves forward with an offensive strategy in eradicating Hamas, they're going to be viewed as the killers.
To support Israel's rights to defend themselves against this brutality. Congressman, why do you have the Palestinian flag outside your office if you do not condone what Hamas terrorism done to Israel?
Do you condemn Hamas then? Tell me that.
I've already said that I condemn the violence that Hamas...
But Hamas as an organization, a terrorist organization, will you condemn them?
I don't see them as a terrorist organization.
Hamas is a political movement that was elected.
The justification of the violence is the occupation.
Palestinians are leading a freedom movement.
Hamas is a movement, and then you fight back for that and you stand for your rights. That does not make you a terrorist. That makes you a defender.
A lot of them were very disappointed when the United States moved its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Again, I think that Hamas decided that now to amass these capabilities and to carry out this attack, they need to bring more attention in the region and globally to what they consider to be their plight.
Palestinians are the people who have been protesting non-violently
to prevent the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians.
This is the most extreme fundamentalist right-wing supremacist government in the history of the state of Israel.
Israel is notorious for creating propaganda
That did not get raped.
No.
Netanyahu is basically running his own narrative of what he wants to excuse himself. How does this end? Killing and genociding and holocausting all the Palestinians.
Of the apartheid state of Israel, which has no legitimate reason for existing.
I mean, hear me out. We striked first because we wanted our land back, and that's what people do when they want the thing back.
You guys are associating that Hamas is a terrorist organization. It's a resistance.
And then you have the left cheering for the violence, cheering for the killing of civilians, calling for more, chanting in the streets, there's only one solution.
Israel is a terrorist state.
I salute Hamas. A job well done.
Hamas
Well, what-
is not a terrorist group.
What is it, like a motorcycle club? Or?
It's every single thing they have done is justified.
Resistance is a human right. It was exhilarating. It was exhilarating. It was energizing. Okay. If it weren't exhilarating, but this challenge to the monopoly of violence, but this shifting of the balance of power that is in one country to one. I find it exhilarating. Intifada! Intifada! We will honor all our martyrs! We will honor all our martyrs!
Hamas are Palestinians. Okay? All of us, Hamas, successful. Free Palestine. This is justified when people are occupied.
Thank you. Fuck Israel. No problem. Fuck Israel.
Glory to the murders.
I'd like to know who's funding the Students for Justice for Palestine and where this money's coming from that's creating this propaganda that's infiltrating our academic institutions, our media institutions, and trying to drive this anti-Jewish message.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome founder and director CPAC Australia, Andrew Cooper.
Wow, CPAC. How good is this? I love coming to CPAC. My name is Andrew Cooper. I live in a town or city called Brisbane in Australia. I know you've never heard of it. But it's where we're having the Olympics in 8 years' time. It's also where we're having the next CPAC. I'm not sure which of those events will be bigger. CPAC's pretty good. Brisbane's also famous because it's located near the Gold Coast. And we've got the wonderful Great Barrier Reef beside it. We've also got all the things that'll kill you. You know, we've got sharks and snakes and spiders and jellyfish. And yeah, we got communists as well. They kill more than anyone else, right? I don't know whether you noticed, but Australia's a pretty woke place. Nigel Farage, 2 years ago on this very stage, you know, proclaimed that Australia is the wokest nation on earth. I think part of that opinion was formed because every time he comes to Australia, he gets protested at CPAC Australia. We don't get protesters unless Nigel turns up. But having said that, the COVID experience in Australia was absolutely abhorrent. You know, we had pregnant grandmothers. That's definitely not woke. We had grandmothers, you know, without masks in public spaces, no one around them getting dragged off because they weren't masked. We had a woman that CPAC actually funded the legal defence for, who posted the wrong thing on Facebook and got arrested, handcuffed and dragged off. She was pregnant. So, you know, there's some crazy things went on down under. And I guess the question that I guess we ask ourselves down under, and also perhaps you have this question, is why? Why would a country like Australia, which we see ourselves as these outback, you know, rough sort of tumble guys and girls, why would they do this? And I think the problem is, in my assessment, is that essentially the Liberal Party, which is the Conservative Party there, the classical Liberal Party, they didn't mount a counter-narrative. All the state premiers, which is equivalent to your governors, all agreed that lockdowns and mandates were the way to go. The federal Liberal Party squibbed it. They decided, that means they capitulated. They threw their lot in with the premiers. And, you know, you have your rhinos, we have our linos. And if you think about it, if all sides of politics are saying that one path is the way to go, it's pretty hard for the disengaged centre to, I guess, separate themselves and think, no, this is wrong, right? So you got your activists. We had a lot of protests. They got ruthlessly shut down with stormtrooper-like behaviour. But, you know, at the end of the day, when all the parties were saying this is the way to go, that's how we locked ourselves down. That's how we let them get away with this crushing of civil rights, in my opinion. So that was 2 years ago. Oh, I'll give you a statistic to tell you how crazy this was. So if you think about under 50s, the pandemic started in February. At the end of July, 5 people in Australia under 50 had died of COVID. Every one of them had comorbidities that made them susceptible to the disease. 6 people had died of the AstraZeneca vaccine, which we could call a virus. 8 people had died of shark attack. I mean, it's insane, right? You could still swim in the ocean, but you weren't allowed to leave your home. It was just incredible. In the back of all that, the federal Labor Party, the left-leaning party, took power 18 months ago federally, and they decided the smart thing to do, Australia's pretty woke, let's play some wedge politics. Let's introduce a change to the Constitution where we create what we'd call a third chamber, a separate kind of parliament. We have, like you, we have our House of Representatives, we have our Senate, and they were going to create this third sort of chamber. And that chamber would have veto powers over the houses that are elected by the people. The only people that could be elected or appointed to that separate chamber of government were from one particular race, our Indigenous Australians. If you think about our values, the values that we share, Conservatives share across the globe, this breaches one of our fundamental beliefs, doesn't it not? That we're all equal. We're all born equal, one vote, one value. How is it that one race can get more power over all the other races? And we've got a lot of them in Australia, just as you have. This proved very popular. The reason it was popular initially was because there's not an Australian alive that doesn't want for better outcomes for some of our remote area Indigenous communities. I mean, we do. But this was never going to help them. The problems in those remote areas is generations of welfare dependency and drug abuse and lots of problems, kids roaming the streets. This voice, this parliament was never going to help, but it was popular. And this is what the left does, don't they? They wedge us, they divide us. They tried to divide us by accusing anyone who votes against this measure was a racist. You've heard this, right? You get that here, right? Yeah, it's abhorrent. Australia is not a racist country, but they will try to tell everyone that will listen that we are racist, and we're not. What this was a fundamental breach of that value. We're all equal. CPAC had an absolute fundamental Australia had a fundamental place to play in the fight back against this against this legislation, against this referendum, this constitutional change. Our chairman, who unfortunately can't be here today because of personal reasons at the last minute, our chairman, Warren Mundine, an Indigenous Australian, a well-known advocate for Indigenous business and getting people off welfare and advocating for Indigenous organisations and people and individuals to get up and make a life for themselves. He, along with Indigenous Senator and CPAC Speaker Jacinta Price, went on a road trip for a year explaining to Australian people that this cannot stand, this division within Australia, this tearing the country apart and claiming that people who don't vote for this are racist, this creating extra powers for one race is fundamentally not what a liberal democracy like Australia is about. And guess what? We won. It was fantastic. And not just one, it was a smashing. It was an absolute smashing. It started at 70% in favour. By the end of it, that had dropped down to 40%, and that sort of margin is unheard of. So a big proportion of the country changed their mind, and so that was fantastic. I personally am very hopeful that Nigel Farage, when he pronounced us as the most woke nation on earth, I'm hopeful he'll take his words back.
car loans are skyrocketing. Home ownership, the central thesis of the American dream to our parents and grandparents, is now a mirage to the millennials. They say inflation is down, but prices are still up. I never thought I'd live to the day where I'd spend $11 on a bag of carrots. Chaos for lawmakers is having to write budgets and take tough votes. The chaos they are willing to inflict on your life is changing things for the worse. I actually want orderly things like budgets that balance, single subject spending bills, term limits, block grant Medicaid, drill for oil, export liquefied natural gas to anyone willing to buy it in dollars, demand that, I don't know, if the government wants to spy on Americans, they should have to get a warrant, and we should secure the southern border. Does that sound like chaos? Or the orderly administration of this country that you deserve? Now, Democrats, they believed in these things some point between 20 years and like 20 minutes ago. Now, they are the party of forever wars abroad, high prices, low T, and reverse racism here at home. And by the way, speaking of racism, if it is not racist to ask for an ID for a hunting license or a fishing license, then it is not racist to ask for an ID to vote in any election, in any jurisdiction, in a free country, the United States of America. So I've noticed there are like two plays that House Republicans right now seem to be really good at running: the punt and the block. And granted, I've thrown a few Hail Marys into the playbook, but the punt and the block seem to be what they're all in on. We blocked the terrible Langford amnesty bill in the United States Senate, but we punted on needed spending cuts. We blocked Mitch McConnell's desire to deficit spend to fund the wants of nations oceans away, but we punted on chronically needed reforms to the abuse of the FISA process where Americans were being spied on. We blocked more money to Ukraine for now, and we punted Kevin McCarthy, who authorized $115 billion to Ukraine that we now see slushing around the money laundering capitals of the world. We shouldn't have any foreign aid to any other country without corresponding cuts to our own bloated federal budget. If you want to send aid to Israel, fine. Pay for it by defunding the United Nations. I want the UN to be zeroed out in our budget. The US should be out of the UN, and the UN should be out of the US. How about that? How about take the money away from the entity that had some of their own people attacking and killing Israelis? Seems like a good offset. I know we've heard a lot about Alexei Navalny's death recently. Tragic. You should be allowed to oppose the ruling party in your country without risk of poison or prison or death. But I would remind everyone, especially the journalists in the back, that Ukraine's Zelensky imprisoned an American journalist who then died in prison, Gonzalo Lira. Not only that, but Zelensky supports outlawing an entire religion, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. And he just canceled Ukraine's presidential elections. Now, call me old-fashioned, but I actually prefer democracies that hold elections. To be clear, Putin is no friend of ours. He partners with adversaries like Iran and is opposed to America's interests. But realism in our foreign policy means being clear-eyed. It is being anti-war, not anti-American. My goals are clearly defined. Can the neoconservative followers of John Bolton and Liz Cheney and Nikki Haley say the same? And what's really left unsaid in this Ukraine aid debate is that Europe's fecklessness is a direct result of them becoming national security welfare queens, largely at your expense. Our European allies, which consist of some very wealthy nations, underspend on their own defense because they dupe you into paying for much of it. Spain spends less on its military than we do on the Department of Interior. France spends less money on their military than we do on the Department of Labor. I think they're allergic to labor in France. With friends like these, do we really need to be searching behind every sand dune or in every Central Asian cave for more enemies? We went straight from a welfare program for Afghan poppy farmers to this. America is not the world's police force, and we are not the world's piggy bank. It is not sustainable. It doesn't make us stronger to borrow money from China to give to another country. We are saddling future generations with so much debt, all while becoming weaker at our core. Now, Democrats want us to believe that Joe Biden can still be commander-in-chief in 2029. I'm opening the 2024 vintage of this wine, and I don't think it's going to get better with age. Joe Biden isn't getting sharper or stronger or smarter. He is getting older, weaker, and less equipped to lead. Trusting Joe Biden for 4 more years in the Oval Office is like trusting Dominion to count your votes. It's a risky bet. We all know it is time to take Grandpa's keys away, and he just keeps getting meaner and weirder about it. What else can explain allowing the world's prisons to be emptied and sent across our border? Biden is aiding and abetting the invasion of our nation by thugs, Islamic extremists, and Chinese spies. Think about these: a porous border, an unending stream of money supporting a forever war. These are grave, but man, are there simple solutions, like not sending billions of dollars to corrupt countries and finishing the wall and endeavoring upon the largest deportation effort in American history. Word is, I now have problems with the Ethics Committee, which seems really odd to me because I'm the one screaming loudest for actual ethics reforms. Members of Congress should have a lifetime ban on becoming lobbyists or registered foreign agents. We should make it impermissible and disallowed by rule for anyone to accept a campaign donation from a lobbyist or a special interest PAC. Their sole purpose is to buy votes. And for the same reason you don't let the umpire bet on the game, members of Congress should not be allowed to trade individual stocks. How about the Ethics Committee take up those reforms? Now, the Republican ethics chairman, Michael Guest, not only voted for the January 6th Commission, he has become a brilliant stock trader while in office. And I admire the obvious genius. He knew exactly the right time to buy online gambling stocks. His purchase in Evolution Gaming Securities netted him a hefty 36% gain. Not too shabby. Now, I'm not saying that this is insider trading, but this monetary affair is perhaps the most suspicious I've seen since Fani Willis and Nathan Wade. So fire your financial advisor. Just follow the Quiver quantitative account on X. You could have been on the ride up with Republican Michael Guest on gambling stocks. You could have made millions like Nancy Pelosi did on NVIDIA. Or maybe you'll get a big return on a Raytheon purchase with Armed Services member and Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin. You see, when I offer these critiques that include the conduct of some fellow Republicans, I catch a lot of heat. Don't get me wrong, I'd prefer to just fight the Democrats. But if the Republicans are going to dress up like Democrats in drag, then I will lead the fight against them too. I'm here to fight for you. It's the people's house, after all. Last time I checked, the people hate Congress. We have a lower approval rating than the IRS. So I don't give a rip if they boo me on the floor, if they hate me and their corrupt little souls, and they can even try to expel me on bullshit if they want. But this is a movement that the Uniparty cannot kill. They're trying with President Trump, and even the MSNBC resistance libs admit that he grows stronger by the day. Well, you know what? In the MAGA movement, at CPAC, my friends Matt and Mercy Schlapp, all of you, we are all growing stronger. And I am the strongest fighting these battles with you in my corner. I appreciate your prayers and your hopes and your love. and I will never stop fighting for you. God bless you. God bless this great country. Let's go get them.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Presidente de Vox, Santiago Abascal.
Gracias. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias al CPAC por permitir que me dirija a todos ustedes y que traiga un mensaje desde España. Y enhorabuena a todos ustedes por seguir peleando por hacer a América grande otra vez. Nosotros trabajamos para hacer a España grande de nuevo, como cada uno de los invitados internacionales de este Congreso que trabajan para fortalecer y para defender sus naciones y su propia soberanía. Porque solo desde naciones fuertes podemos defender la cultura, los valores que nos unen, la patria, la libertad, la razón, la fe de nuestros padres, la familia, la propiedad, la soberanía, la democracia y la limitación del poder. Y por encima de todo, la vida sin la que no hay nada, la vida desde su principio hasta su fin natural. Una cultura de valores que vincula a cuantos estamos aquí porque todos formamos parte de ella. Y una cultura de principios que hoy se encuentra amenazada en todo el mundo por quienes pretenden destruirla, desde fuera de nuestras naciones, pero también desde dentro. Hace ya muchos años, el socialismo levantó un telón de acero y por primera vez encarceló a millones de personas dentro de sus propios países. Todos los que creemos en la libertad debemos dar las gracias a Estados Unidos y a las naciones aliadas por su empeño en derribar el telón de acero del socialismo. Pero hoy el socialismo, en sus distintas versiones, sigue amenazando nuestra forma de vida, sigue empeñado en dictarnos la manera de pensar, sigue pretendiendo imponer una versión falsa de la historia, sigue sembrando el germen de la división en las naciones y sigue tratando de esparcir el odio a nuestra civilización en el corazón de nuestros propios hijos. El socialismo, que sigue, en definitiva, desde su poder mediático, económico y político, debilitando a nuestras naciones y a nuestras patrias que se resisten a su ansia totalitaria de poder. Al igual que hicieron durante la Guerra Fría, los socialistas pretenden ahora criminalizar a los pueblos que se defienden y a los gobernantes que protegen las vidas de sus ciudadanos frente a las mafias de la droga o frente a las mafias de la inmigración ilegal. Pero nosotros sabemos que los pueblos libres solo lo son si emplean toda la contundencia necesaria frente a los criminales. El socialismo y el globalismo gobiernan contra el pueblo. Los trabajadores del campo, del transporte, de la industria, toda la clase media sufre las imposiciones suicidas de la Agenda 2030, del Pacto Verde Europeo y de todas las políticas que desde el fanatismo climático tienen como principal objetivo destruir la prosperidad y la riqueza de nuestras naciones. Y a la vez benefician a las grandes corporaciones y a los falsos filántropos que acumulan las tierras que tienen que abandonar los agricultores y a la vez impulsan la imposición de experimentos como el de la carne sintética. Un negocio redondo cuando puedes obligar a la gente a comer lo que tú dices que hay que comer. Gobiernan contra el bien común, contra la iniciativa privada. Promueven la inmigración ilegal y masiva en connivencia con las mafias del tráfico de seres humanos, que crea miseria en los países de origen, tragedia en las fronteras y destrucción de la seguridad en nuestras calles y en nuestras ciudades. Y como las naciones de Occidente por fin han despertado, como nuestros pueblos se resisten a esta eutanasia, obligatoria, ahora tratan de prohibir la disidencia, de negar la democracia, de destruir la autoestima nacional, la libertad de expresión, la libertad de pensamiento, la libertad de enseñanza y hasta los simples enunciados de la ciencia, como la biología misma. Son enemigos de la libertad y de la ciencia. Eso es la cultura woke que el socialismo impulsa. Han hecho de ella una herramienta para dividir y para manipular, utilizando lo mismo la raza, el color de la piel, que el sexo o la religión. Las antiguas universidades, como las de Salamanca, la de Bolonia o la de Harvard, diseñadas para agrandar la cultura, han sido convertidas hoy en máquinas de censura, de coacción, de adoctrinamiento y de antisemitismo. Queremos universidades que sean templos del saber, de la libertad de pensamiento, de la transmisión de conocimiento, y no queremos comisarios perturbados que inventen géneros, que perviertan la inocencia de los menores, que reescriban la historia o que promuevan ideologías criminales. Si ayer las universidades eran un espacio de libertad frente al autoritarismo del poder, hoy, por desgracia, son la punta de lanza del totalitarismo que viene. Le han declarado la guerra al sentido común, a la verdad, al lenguaje y a la biología. Nosotros reivindicamos nuestras raíces, la herencia de nuestros padres y la herencia y el legado que debemos a nuestros hijos. Porque la patria es la comunión de los que nos precedieron, de los que estamos y de los que aún están por venir. Y nuestro amor a la libertad se ha hecho piedra en monumentos que enseñan nuestra historia, como los levantados a Isabel la Católica, a Fray Junípero Serra o a Tomás Jefferson, nombres ahora perseguidos por quienes odian nuestra cultura y nuestra civilización. Y ese odio, como muchas veces en la historia, está promovido por grandes oligarquías económicas, hijos del capitalismo de amiguetes y enemigas de la verdadera libertad económica de las clases medias occidentales y de la propiedad privada. Ellos están condenando a grandes zonas a la desindustrialización y al paro. Se han convertido en el brazo ejecutor de los fanatismos ideológicos. Cierran las fábricas o echan abajo las centrales energéticas en Europa o en Estados Unidos para abrirlas en China o en otras potencias tantas veces hostiles. Su futuro verde no es más que un futuro rojo donde las grandes corporaciones se convierten en las policías del pensamiento. Debemos proteger la economía de nuestras naciones, debemos proteger la libertad económica y la propiedad privada. Debemos defender el derecho de cada persona a labrarse su propio futuro y a poder competir en igualdad de oportunidades frente a quienes pretenden someternos a agendas globalistas y socialistas. Son esos multimillonarios globalistas que están dispuestos a acabar con la soberanía de las naciones, sometiendo a la prensa libre, censurando en las redes sociales, impulsando la cultura de la cancelación, que no es otra cosa que la anticultura totalitaria. El socialismo, queridos amigos, ya lo he dicho al principio de mi intervención, se ha disfrazado de distintas maneras. En los países de la iberosfera, en Iberoamérica, avanza de la mano del narcotráfico y de políticos europeos de la extrema izquierda. Nosotros los conocemos muy bien en España, porque en España padecemos un gobierno de comunistas, de socialistas, que protegen y amparan el terrorismo de Hamás y que se declaran aliados a través del Grupo de Puebla y del Foro de Sao Paulo de los regímenes criminales de Venezuela y de Nicaragua. Y también de Cuba. Hace 65 años que esa nación hermana de España, la nación cubana, padece un régimen asesino. Y yo hoy quiero recordar a todos los cubanos que dedicaron su vida, y tantos la perdieron, para devolver la libertad a su patria y que lucharon en la cárcel, en la comunidad o en el exilio. Hoy y siempre, ¡viva Cuba libre! En el recuerdo de esos héroes frente al comunismo, nos conjuramos para decir que el futuro no está escrito. O dicho de otra manera, que podemos cambiar el rumbo al que nos dirigen. Gritemos stop al descarrilado tren de la historia y reencontrémonos con las costumbres y los saberes que un día funcionaron y alumbraron el mundo. La tradición no es la adoración de las cenizas, sino la transmisión del fuego. Volvamos a transmitir ese fuego. Volvamos a los vínculos fuertes que nos hacen libres como personas. Los vínculos familiares, los vínculos locales, laborales, religiosos y sobre todo los vínculos nacionales, pues es la soberanía de las naciones y la libre colaboración entre ellas lo que nos protegerá del globalismo socialista. Si hacemos todo eso, creo que podemos tenerlo claro, estaremos haciendo a Occidente grande otra vez. Hagámoslo juntos. Tenemos muchas diferencias entre nosotros, por supuesto. La realidad de España no es la misma que la de Estados Unidos, igual que la de las naciones iberoamericanas, hermanas de la mía, y refugio hoy de tantos valores y principios de Occidente, no es la misma que la de muchos estados europeos que también sufren las mismas amenazas. Pero además de enemigos, también compartimos sueños, la pasión por la libertad y el amor profundo a nuestras patrias. Y el amor es mucho más profundo que sus odios. Por ello, en humilde representación de una nación que un día asombró al mundo, permítanme que termine dando un viva a España y a la libertad. Tenemos una gran batalla por delante para hacer a Occidente grande de nuevo, y yo quiero decir hoy desde aquí que deben ustedes tener la seguridad de que los patriotas españoles estamos preparados para pelear junto a los patriotas americanos. Que Dios bendiga a América, a todas las naciones de la hispanidad. God bless America and all the nations of Hispanidad. Muchas gracias.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome former leader of the Brexit Party, Nigel Farage.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, CPAC. Wow, what a pleasure it is to be here. Thank you for that very, very warm welcome. It feels to me like the Atlantic just got a little bit narrower. And that's because I always feel at home when I come